Oh, the big MRE. What do you think they get in that one? Mexican burrito bowl? Pad Thai? Brown goo?
Are you hungry or something?
So much so.
Can't relate on account of being a robot. Why not eat something?
Eat what? I'm sorry, that came out stronger than I intended. I don't actually own any food at the moment. I spent all my money on video games.
I see. Could you...
What?
Well, I mean...
What?
Maybe...
Eat it?
Well, yeah.
Are you insane? Did I create a lunatic?
I don't know how it works!
You should know!
Sorry, I'm not perfect. I learned it from you.
Look, would it make you feel better if I
What?
ate this game?
Yeah?
Alright.
Let's go.
Death by Degrees is a third-person beat-em-up hack-and-slash adventure game, and doing a cool acrobatic attack but not remembering how you did it and thus not being able to ever do it again simulator. It was developed and published by Namco for the PlayStation 2 in the year 2005. This game takes a playable character named Nina Williams from the Tekken franchise and presents a side story depicting a vague point prior to its parent series that doesn't seem consequential enough to be considered an origin, so much as a thing that could have happened before Tekken. In some circles, the game is known by the full title, Tekken's Nina Williams in Death by Degrees, though I prefer the intriguing Spanish title, Tekken's Nina Williams in Death by Degrees. Seducción letal. Prior to these name changes, Death by Degrees began development as simply Nina. I'd have to estimate work on it began at least around 2002, because by 2003 it already had a trailer which premiered at that year's Tokyo Game Show, and then by the following year's show a DVD was distributed which included gameplay footage and an interview with the game's producer, Yozo Sakagami. While numerous publications and wikis parrot the factoid that the title Death by Degrees was chosen because of the various forms of directional combat present in the game, Sakagami proffers the more likely reason because it sounded cool. Cool enough to inspire you to shatter the solar plexus of Rick from accounting, as depicted in this TV spot us Yanks were robbed of.
Death by Degrees.
Death by Degrees, or whatever you'd like to call it, was one of the last titles released by Namco before the company was pressured to merge with Bandai, and I'm not an expert at parsing through the boring intricacies of a corporation's finances, or my own. When I go down to the local In-N-Out, I just empty a sandwich baggie of various coins and slide them over to the cashier, who understandably rolls their eyes at me. But in a flailing attempt to parse through it, after the 90s, the rat race of arcade fighting machines began slowly winding down in Japan, as all the big franchises began to prioritize home console versions and used arcades as beta testing essentially. According to the book The Art of Tekken, A Complete Visual History, in the year 2000, Namco released Tekken Tag Tournament for the PS2, which took the Tekken characters and combat, but switched up the mechanics to allow you to tag in a second player, and it tinkered around with the idea of tactically swapping between the two as the defeat of one of them meant a defeat for both. This idea was different enough that they felt it could be its own thing and not a numbered sequel. Fans seemed to respond pretty well to this game, and it sold impressively, setting a high bar to meet for the next title. Unfortunately, when Tekken 4 released the following year, it returned to the old format and mostly acted as a graphical upgrade, adding superfluous things like destructible environments. Sales and reviews suggested that fans were pretty disappointed by that, and perhaps feeling pressure to right the Namco ship, series director Katsuhiro Harada temporarily resigned from his position.
I'm very upset. I'm very upset. Shut up!
In that interim, without Tekken's main brain, the iron was nice and tepid for a novel cash-in on the Tekken name. Well, it's somewhat novel, as Midway would beat them to the fighter spin-off game with Mortal Kombat twice, and a third, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, releasing just months after Death by Degrees. In truth, there was really no shortage of third-person beat-em-ups and hack-and-slashes in the mid-aughts. Both games shared the stage with the likes of Nightshade, Blood Will Tell, Nano Breaker, Devil May Cry 3, Beatdown, Fists of Vengeance, Genji, Dawn of the Samurai, and most notably, Team Ninja's Ninja Gaiden reboot, which many drew comparisons to and often included in their criticism of Death by Degrees, claiming that it had pilfered parts of its gameplay as well as aspects of Resident Evil and Metal Gear Solid, titles you'd think were invoked as a compliment, but no. I've always maintained that you should only steal good ideas, but then again, stealing anything kind of does it for me. On top of that, Tekken was in something of a rivalry with Team Ninja's Dead or Alive series, which released its 4th iteration that year. So to some, the very idea of Death by Degrees was seen as them attempting to siphon more fans from Tecmo over to Namco, which very well may have been the case when it comes to a face-off between Omnicorp and Global Tech. This rekindled an ongoing, mostly one-sided beef with the director of both Ninja Gaiden and Dead or Alive, Tomonobu Itagaki, who looks like this, by the way, because it's important to the story. Itagaki took every opportunity to give the finger to Tekken, contributing such highlights as a OneUp.com post in which he was asked to list his 5 least favorite games, to which he answered Tekken 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I don't know what they're trying to do with all these spin-offs. This includes Nina Death by Degrees as well. I don't think it even needs saying, but people should stay away from Tekken. Nothing left to say, I just don't want them to disappoint me anymore. It's so annoying. Please don't annoy me anymore. There's also an interview with Eurogamer in which he refers to the Tekken series as prehistoric and fires a jab at Death by Degrees, calling it an absurd bonus game. A moniker apparently not applicable to a project he acted as director on just 2 years prior, Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. A video game that for the life of me I can't understand how or why it ever left the mainland other than to populate interstitials and bumpers for G4 and Spike TV. The cognitive dissonance here is actually crazy.
Wait, why do you own it then?
What?
Why do you have a copy in your hand?
What do you mean? Because I'm doing content on it.
Right. Does that require owning it?
Yeah, how else would I source accurate footage? Don't do this.
Do
I know what you're... Itagaki was absolutely known for his frank and frankly hot takes and his willingness to put down his competition. So many of these interviews where he takes shots at Tekken feel like he's very transparently being led there. They were poking him in hopes of getting a headline. I think this is most apparent in a very confrontational 2002 interview with Xbox Nation, where they drag out of him the supposed origin of his dislike for the series, and he reveals that at some point in time, in some place, Namco released a radio advertisement for Tekken that insulted Dead or Alive in some way. Of course, I have no way of confirming that, not saying it didn't happen, but it's like saying, one time I saw a flyer stapled to a telephone pole that called me a dickhead. Like, alright, this is an ephemeral, fleeting thing, what can you do? Apparently say, as the father of DOA, I will never forget an insult to my family. I will get them back with nuclear missiles more than 100 times for that. I will never forget it. Really, every detail of this interview is comedically fascinating. I'd love to see it recreated live action, especially the part where Itagaki abruptly gets up and walks over to the back of the room. He unsheaths a shining 3-foot katana blade from a display case and points it directly at us. Itagaki. You like this? They curiously also prod him on that volleyball game and why he claims he has a paternal relationship with these teenage characters he so wantonly sexualizes. And he responds very reassuringly, I think the legal age is 20, but there are cultures in the world where girls get married at 13. Not seeing this flag as crimson enough, he then later goes on to claim his favorite film is Leon the Professional. Which is like, it's just that you're saying that within a really fucking weird context, man. Just as a bow on this elongated aside, in 2011, OneUp.com interviewed Harada now that Itagaki had left Team Ninja, and it was sort of just the objective reality that Dead or Alive was no longer a true rival to Tekken, and in this he expresses sadness that their feud came to an end, that the new guy at Team Ninja is a lot more diplomatic and corporate in his trash talk, and simply simply won't call him an asshole and say that his game sucks. No more will he pick up a gaming mag and see what new insults this living anime character lobbed at him. When Itagaki was asked for comment the next day, he said that the new Team Ninja isn't going to mimic his antics because they are ordinary Japanese people, and that he'll continue the feud privately by simply calling him on the phone.
So now that DOX2 is wrapping up, what are you going to work on next?
I'm only going to say this once. My next game is going to be what everyone's expecting.
It's a shame that as the AAA game industry consolidates and creatives are absorbed into an algorithm fed to an AI old god, you see less and less of these types of guys, these auteur game designers who dazzle the nameless drones of a game studio with their prognosticative insight. Anyways, Death by Degrees was released to a variety of shrugs and hand gestures mimicking an off-balance measuring device. Game Informer provided one of the more generous reviews, yet still gave the game a 5.5 out of 10, complimenting its unique control scheme and Nina's flashy finishing moves, but relents that nearly every other aspect misses its mark, writing, "All told, this game will please neither action fans nor followers of the Tekken franchise, and it comes off as a marketing scheme gone awry." IGN would award it a similar numeric score, but was far more critical of its fixed camera angles and frequent loading, finding only Nina's finishing moves and, bizarrely, the slide puzzles gating off items as the game's commendable qualities, writing, "Death by Degrees is nothing else but a disappointment. It's a game that wrongs its user over and over again, so that after only a few short hours, the novelty of analog combat wears extremely thin. It wears so thin, in fact, that the already dated exploratory mechanics don't do anything to save it. Even stalwart Tekken fans will need to flex extra hard to squeeze some fun out of this one." At the time of my writing, Namco, what is it called now? It might just be Namco, a subsidiary of Bandai Namco Holdings. Aside from the odd alternate game mode, Namco would refrain from giving another Tekken character their own game, and all but forget this one, leaving it stranded on physical media, where some sicko can pluck it from the garbage, encase it in plastic, and assign it an arbitrary grading, and then place that in a glass case in a used video game store where it shall sit unpurchased forevermore. If you're not familiar with Tekken and its surprisingly expansive, absurd lore that mixes fantasy, sci-fi, the occult, and various mythologies into a millennial-stained soap opera, I'll recount enough at least so we can somewhat know our protagonist's role in it all. It should be said that the plot of Tekken has always been secondary for the developers, and it wasn't until Tekken 3 that they really sat down and tried to figure out what any of these bizarre cutscenes meant. To me, the most noteworthy theme that has carried through the franchise from day one to day now is family drama. At the center of them all is the Mishima family, and by extension a massive multinational conglomerate that specializes in, I think, military weapons development, called Mishima Zaibatsu. This organization, as well as operating a private army that rivals in size to some entire nations, conducts a regular fighting tournament called the King of Iron Fist Tournament. Well, come to the King of Iron Fist Tournament, and is headed by Heihachi Mishima, the on and off villain of the franchise, and game by game we are introduced to much of the Mishima lineage, such as his wife, Kazumi, who attempted to kill him, in part because her family bloodline contains something called the Devil Gene, which is its own can of worms. His father, Jinpachi, the original head of Mishima Zaibatsu that he overthrew and kept chained up beneath a temple. His son, Kazuya Mishima, who he threw off a cliff to test his worthiness as a successor. Then Kazuya defeated him in the tournament and threw Heihachi off a cliff. But then Heihachi throws Kazuya into a volcano, which doesn't kill him because he had the devil gene like his mother. So next time Heihachi throws Kazuya's son, Jin, out of a helicopter, but well, much the same outcome. He's still linked to a clan of assassins that made a deal with the demon Azazel, so Jin throws Heihachi off a temple and flies off into the night. In Tekken 5, another character named Ling Xiaoyu attempts to use a time machine to prevent Heihachi from ever throwing Kazuya off a cliff, but she inadvertently plays into some sort of causality loop and winds up knocking him in with the device itself anyways. And then, back in present day, Heihachi straps Jinpachi, Kazuya, and Jin to a rocket and shoots them into space, finally embracing the fact that the series had just been a fucking Roadrunner cartoon. So obviously in the next one, Heihachi then goes up to space in order to drop all three back down to Earth. He was nice enough to give them all spacesuits though. Then I believe in the newest game, this cycle of violence against immortal hunks begins anew, with Kazuya throwing Jin off a cliff, unless I'm forgetting a step and that configuration of thrower and thrown has already been done or mentioned. Even though Heihachi is, I guess you could say, the closest thing to a normal human man in the Tekken franchise, despite being able to halt a meteor by headbutting it. Of course, being dropped in a volcano did not kill him. I started reading why, but then my eyes glazed over and I woke up with my head on the keyboard and a series of random keys had been pressed, filling page upon page with various characters. Rest assured, he waved a Heihachi magic wand and against all odds came back. Starting around Tekken 4, this tournament becomes more than just about winning a large sum of money and seems to follow a Willy Wonka-esque logic, where the victor is just made the CEO of Mishima Zaibatsu, thus having the power to do literally anything in the world except make it better. Even Ling, upon winning, opts to create a massive amusement park instead of just providing affordable housing or like a school lunch program. How does Nina Williams factor into all of this? Well, in a way, I think her place in the Tekken franchise was one of the more viable choices to spin off, despite the numerous cries of, what about my favorite strong man? Wouldn't his story be more interesting? I like this strong guy, who has a vague storyline about becoming too strong a guy. What about his story? Well, for one thing, herstory is what we're making here. 1 minute she could be trying to kill another character, and the next she's working for them, or becoming a Hollywood actress. Don't try and define her. She's the wind, baby. This sounds pretty freeing from a writing perspective. Add to that the fact that the game is non-canonical, and so you could literally do, you want him to do you so much you could do anything. Ina is an assassin for hire, and both she and her sister Anna were trained to be assassins by their mother, an Aikido master, which I believe is the fighting style of Steven Seagal. And their father, Richard Williams, who seems to be some kind of discarded remnant of one of few pointedly political decisions Tekken has ever even suggested. I did a double take when looking at the wiki page for him because it lists him as being a former assassin for the IRA, but he's retired now. He gave up that life in '94 of all times. He must have heard that Cranberry song and was like, damn, I thought all this stuff was happening, but I guess not. I didn't even know she was Irish, but sure enough, Nina's bio in the manual for Tekken 2 describes her as an assassin for the people of Ireland, which must have in itself crossed a boundary for the PAL audience because that version amends this bio, rewriting her background as a Secret Service operative. Anna didn't get a profile in Tekken 1 or 2 because she's an unlockable character, but the official website gave her one, and that, once translated, reads, Anna's dislike for her father and sister has grown worse, and the sisters continue to fight each other. This quarrel is not just a simple quarrel. It turns out to be an extremely serious fight, with Nina planting a bomb in Anna's car. Safe to say, I think they were doing something. What that was, I don't know. I got a lot of questions on that front. Tekken fans have so inundated Harada with questions about the lore that he's adopted the catchphrase,
Don't ask me horse shit.
But every once in a while he does seem to improv responses to things he likely never considered, such as, why don't the Williams sisters have Irish accents? To which he said, to hide their background. But then what, they just go around to all these world events using their full legal name? Maybe you're the one trying to hide their background.
Don't ask me horse.
Obviously, this doesn't express itself during Nina's decidedly irreverent ending in the original Tekken, which depicts her slapping Anna after being accused of stealing her shoe. But get this, the little rascal, she did take that shoe. Tekken is a series that stomps into the world of politics, knowingly or not, but clearly doesn't intend to express anything that deep while being there, doing so with all the grace and guile of an off-putting episode of Deadliest Warrior. The premise of the King of Iron Fist tournament requires the deadliest representatives from existing nations all over the globe, and while some are participating for revenge or to save someone or find something, some are there simply to serve their homeland's interest. In the world of Tekken, there are two corporate superpowers, led by two Mishimas, and world governments are just sort of tiptoeing around them. The conflict of Tekken is not interested in its alt history and the grand strategy of it all. I'm of the opinion that it's all a grand allegory for having a shitty dad. How much bigger can you take that concept than by making father and son supernatural beings facing off through both acts of war and goofy displays of hypermasculinity? Kazuya is simply perpetuating a vicious cycle. He's pushed away by his father, and thus starts worshipping the devil and listening to rock music, and now, so too shall Jin unless he breaks the chain. Every entry in this series is comparable to a child's drawing of how the world functions, in the most amusing way, where the only thing stronger than a strong guy is that strong guy's dad. Oh, so Anna hates Nina, believing she exclusively received affection from their father by following in his footsteps and becoming an assassin for hire, while she, wanting a normal life, denied this path. Her participation in the tournament is likely just to have a shot at revenge. In Tekken 2, Nina again joins the tournament, this time to assassinate Kazuya and thwart the imperialist efforts of the Mishima Zaibatsu for the people of Ireland, if I may add my own flavor text. Through the endings, we learn that the violent rivalry between the sisters is at a temporary standstill to mourn the death of their father. Nina once again smiles at the camera, either out of peace with her sister or to suggest later. Anna's ending cutscene is far less thoughtful, depicting her exiting the shower only to be ambushed by Nina with a Polaroid camera. She snaps a pic and holds it up, taunting her. I guess in a weird, distant way, it is a similar tone in that they aren't hitting or trying to kill each other, just picking on each other the way siblings might, though you'd hope wouldn't. In between Tekken 2 and Tekken 3, there is an almost 20-year time jump. Because of this, many of the characters have aged or been replaced by their children. Unaffected by this, however, are Nina and Anna. See, after failing to assassinate Kazuya, Nina was cryogenically frozen by a Russian robotics scientist, so if I'm following this correctly, at this point in the timeline, Kazuya has taken control of Mishima Zaibatsu and the majority of Hokkaido, and he's kidnapped this doctor to study cryogenic freezing for him in an effort to understand the devil gene. And so Anna, admitting that she'd miss her sister now that they've somewhat reconciled, tracks down Kazuya and asks to be frozen alongside Nina. I'm not sure how long they were meant to remain frozen because it's contradicted in Tekken 4, but after sometimes 19 years, they are both suddenly woken up due to the appearance of a being named Ogre, a humanoid weapon left to the Aztecs by extraterrestrials, known to Native Americans as the God of Fighting, which is pretty illustrative of the utter lack of restraint this series has, that it's barely the third entry and we're already pitted against the God of Fighting. Oh, also, Nina's memory was damaged during the freezing process, so she doesn't even remember Anna. In Nina's ending, Anna takes her back to the Russian scientist to try and retrieve her memories, but the procedure is a failure. In a last-ditch effort, she takes Nina to their father's grave, which does seem to surface enough to remember their fighting. While rubbing her face, Anna gives a look to the camera that says, "That's our Nina." In Anna's ending, the two sisters are sitting by the beach and getting hit on by a bunch of dudes, but Anna is getting hit on by more dudes, while Nina watches with a look of jealousy. For whatever reason, this was changed for the US version, while the Japanese one shows the same scenario, only Nina unhooks Anna's bikini top, causing it to fall off, and she struts off with a look that says, "Got him." All of Nina's ideas for, like, sibling pranks were sourced from boner comedies. In 1998, 1998, Tekken received its first film adaptation in the form of an OVA titled Tekken: The Motion Picture that I found comparable to other video game adaptations at the time in that it had a neat soundtrack, but mostly served as a betrayal of the image you had built up of the game in your mind. Ironic that 8-year-old me was disappointed by this film, which appears to have been written by an 8-year-old. I was cognizant enough to feel pandered to. As soon as the scene with the invisible dinosaurs came around, I was like, you think this is all it takes? I gave up on dinosaurs like 2 years ago. The movie is kind of a mashup of Tekken's 1 through 3, disregarding much of what you could have described as the canon, and puts the Mishima family conflict at its center. Much like every time there's a Batman movie, we gotta sit through the theater alleyway, and the bang, and the falling of the pearls, and the oh, I'm such a sad billionaire, when I grow up I'm gonna punch homeless people until they need to be hospitalized until Zack Snyder directs me, and then I'll just kill them. We again see little Kazuya thrown off a cliff and awaken some supernatural power and enter his father's fighting tournament. Nina and Anna are both kind of treated like shit in this adaptation. I mean, they give both at least one iconic moment, but their appearance is mostly inconsequential. They are both being used by Lee, Heihachi's adopted son, and he's just like fucking them both, and they might be aware of that arrangement, which is kind of weird. They aren't motivated by anything other than their shared loyalty to a boy. So he sort of sicks them on Kazuya because he doesn't want competition in being head of the family business, which is simply not very imaginative.
I'm sure our father will be delighted to hear that you will be entering the competition. Shit.
Also, I'm assuming the creators of the movie wanted there to be stakes of some kind, so some of the characters are killed off, including Anna, who is eaten by an invisible dinosaur that Lee released as she's taunting Nina about also fucking Lee. I just feel like they deserve better than this. The only consolation to this plot element is that there is so much buildup to a confrontation between Lee and his rival Kazuya, and twice this is comedically subverted because he's just worthless in comparison. So his big move is to blow up Mishima headquarters with himself in it, the big boy version of if I can't play with it, nobody can. I don't think I'm a good writer, and certainly less so at the age of 8, but I always felt like what I wanted to see was to have Nina and Anna both realize that they meant nothing to Lee, and then temporarily team up to kick his ass together. That way their conflict was still something kind of vapid and dumb, but it doesn't conclude with a beloved character being eaten by a fucking dinosaur. Mortal Kombat Annihilation was just a year before this. Like, how many times must a child endure this? Honestly, the character arc that comes out the cleanest is Jax. He's a robot built by the same Russian scientist that froze Nina for the purpose of being a mindless killing machine in the military's pocket, but he couldn't bring himself to create such a thing, so he snuck in a consciousness that would be activated in moments of emotional turmoil. This was apparently enough to determine war is bad and I shouldn't participate in it, so he escapes along with a terminally ill little girl whose mother died in whatever war is depicted here. He succeeds in bringing the girl to the doctor that created him so she could have her illness treated, and he dies protecting her like a real human boy. You could snip this out of context and make like an art house indie drama version of it, make it black and white for no reason. It works more than anything else in the movie. In truth, Tekken, the motion picture's strongest quality that stayed with me long after I had forgotten many details of its story was the fact that it came on a white VHS tape, which I had never seen before, and was thus exotic. There are several other Tekken films, but they came about well after Death by Degrees, so they are a bit irrelevant and much goofier than this first one, falling into a trap that many video game adaptations did by setting them in junky shit world, trash can fire city for reasons I cannot explain beyond the popularity of post-apocalyptic settings in the 2010s. I think the one just named Tekken, if it had been developed 5 years earlier, then it would have been made with the correct amount of schlock, but it missed the boat and stands as an embarrassing leftover. It showed up to a party that ended hours ago, but nonetheless stuck around to help sweep. It sort of treats every character that isn't Jin, Raven, or Christy as villains, and apes the Hunger Games setup where it's a fight to the death that's televised and they elect a people's champion so we can cut back to Jin's buddies in Slumtown cheering him on. About the only parts I found admirable was the willingness to just put the characters in the outfits they wore in the game, absurd as that was, and to bombard your screen with video game menu graphics. The writer of that one, by the way, must have really liked the Nina and Anna implied to be sleeping with the same guy concept, and took it to its natural conclusion by having them both fuck Kazuya at the same time. This injustice would be somewhat undone the following year with the release of a computer animated film, Tekken Blood Vengeance, which is probably like more dumb, but way more awesome, and features some actually impressive fight choreography where specific moves from the game spring up like cameos, like Nina's thing that she does where she grabs somebody by the head and then throws them by the head. At the start of Tekken 4, Nina is still missing most of her memories, but she doesn't want anything to do with Mishima Zaibatsu, so she becomes a contract killer for the highest bidder. In this case, a mafia family named the Syndicate hires her to assassinate Steve Fox, a boxer that is participating in the 4th King of Iron Fist tournament. So she once again participates herself. After making it through the game, we see Nina waiting across the street from where Steve is due to appear. Researching her target a bit, she learns that Steve was born through in vitro fertilization, with an egg taken from someone in cryogenic sleep, meaning it would not be interesting if Steve was the biological son of anyone else but Nina. Knowing this causes her to momentarily hesitate. When she has the shot, she's interrupted by Lei Wulong, a police officer character, and the series' homage to Jackie Chan. Nina bails and makes a beeline to Steve, who, thinking she was simply being chased by some dude, dives to protect her. She gives him a little smirk before taking off once again, leaving Steve wondering, damn, who was that fucking smoke show? I gotta look her up on Instant Telegram. Kind of familiar. Unfortunately, Anna is absent from this title. Steve's ending is perhaps a little more thoughtful with this reveal, as his whole objective was to find out more about his mysterious origins. And the same scene in front of the hotel plays out, but it's framed as Nina protecting him from several would-be assassins. After he chases her down, Lei shows up to bust her, but Steve once again protects Nina, immediately understanding who she is to him. In Tekken 5, there is another less substantial time jump of at least a couple years or so. In that time, Nina had been off doing assassin stuff for the Syndicate, but that organization soon fell, leaving her unemployed and no closer to understanding her past. In contrast to her ending in Tekken 4, Nina is described as feeling nothing about the revelation of her son's existence, and the odd circumstances making it so they are more or less the same age. Anna had become sort of bored and listless without Nina. That is, until she gets a call from her asking to meet. As soon as the two lock eyes on each other, they again start fighting, like two violent forces of nature that need to be in conflict to find some sort of equilibrium. Phrased like a folk tale. Those gals kept on fighting for days. Days became weeks, buildings were leveled, rifles emptied, but ultimately when the dust cleared, neither were substantially injured. The two agree to settle their differences in the King of Iron Fist Tournament 5. The ending for both sisters is once again of the haha hee hee variety, straying from the rather grave subject of memory loss and cruel science experiments on comatose women, and landing on a plotline where a Hollywood film producer, captivated by the days-long battle between the two, asks Nina to act in a film, which she initially turns down until she learns that Anna has already agreed to be in it. We see the sisters acting out a medieval fight scene in which Anna emerges victorious and is immediately congratulated for her acting and fawned over by the crew. If you play through as Anna, the same thing plays out, only Nina goes off script and appears to beat Anna in the fight, but all along, Anna had been strategically cutting Nina's costume Zorro style such that it falls away bit by bit. Not exactly proportional to a controlled demolition that no doubt resulted in numerous casualties. Playing as either character also includes silly interludes when you face the other in a match, with each victor refusing to finish the other, leading to the defeated sister pounding the ground with anger.
You bitch! You bitch!
The rest of the franchise is sort of irrelevant to Death by Degrees, and for the most part forgets its existence, survived by some optional skins and design choices that carried over. Nina, like most characters from Tekken, has a story that's told in 3-minute cutscenes with years dividing them, and likely different hands assembling them. Having said that, as someone who was around the series starting at its second entry, its characters were oddly captivating. I'm not like a fighting game fan or anything, but growing up with games, you're more open to just anything that's put in front of you. And I remember feeling like Tekken was noteworthy because its roster seemed intriguingly mismatched, like it was made up of main characters from other stories, where a weird alien samurai could fight a bear, or a jaguar-headed luchador not named Santo could fight the devil.
You lose. Cunt.
So, why Nina? If I had to guess, it might be because she isn't tangled up in the story of the Mishimas. She just intersects with them during her own familial spat, one that is also colored by daddy issues. On top of being a face for the series at one time, she is a free agent, an international assassin that has any reason to be anywhere at any time, because the fluidity of her backstory could allow her to be anything. To speak in terms that may break through to the millennial gamer id, the one thing Itagaki nailed in that bizarre interview was his response to being told his game was adult entertainment. He said, "Let me tell you what entertainment is. Violence, sex, friendship, surprise, betrayal, and dancing." Not to be too far out of step with its parent franchise, Death by Degrees makes no attempt at subtlety, no interest in small stories. A cutscene begins with a voiceover recounting the historic disappearance of Flight 19, one of many air and watercraft that were swallowed up by the notorious Bermuda Triangle. A detail they add to the mythos of this phenomenon is that 12 locations like this exist in the world, places where strange events take place. Science goes wonky and reality bends. In a sequence that will make sense later, a freighter ship radios in a confusing message, no longer able to discern their position. Then from space, a satellite observes some kind of catastrophe befall the ship. Another voiceover, this time addressing Nina, gives some merciful exposition. In a joint operation between the CIA and MI6, 3 operatives are tasked with infiltrating a ship called the Amphitrite, which belongs to a criminal organization named Komeda. Once on board, they need to secretly video a clandestine meeting between organizations. 2 agents codenamed John Doe and Alan Smithy are the ones meant to carry out the bulk of this mission, while Nina boards undercover as a participant in a fighting tournament taking place on board, which she brazenly joins using her full legal name. They refer to her as a sweeper, a sort of contingency plan in case these 2 fuck up, which they of course do. John goes missing, Alan is spotted by guards, and Nina is attacked while basking in the glory of her victory, introducing her to the ship's top assholes, which are Lana Lay, the creepy white-haired owner of the ship who uses some form of telekinetic torment to convert her enemies, her bodyguard, a gun-toting Matthew Lillard lookalike named Bryce, and another Komeda executive, a melee weapons expert and Benicio del Toro lookalike named Enrique. With some kind of plan in mind for her, they lock her in a room, which she immediately escapes from via the complicated MacGyver-esque method of the window, following a trail of blood and discarded spy gadgets to find their missing agent, leading to the unfortunate discovery that he's been stabbed in the neck in a meat locker, and his GPS device that would have helped them keep track of the other targets is in the hands of Bryce. The fight with Bryce is broken up in different set pieces, but with the help of John's nifty fingerprint scanner, Nina can deduce that the last person holding that knife was Edgar Grant, who appears out of focus in a bit of intel he had collected. Nina seldom speaks, but when she does, it's often to report back to the more chatty characters over her radio, or express frustration with the game's scenery-chewing villains.
You better move your ass, or I'm gonna trash your precious toy! God, you're annoying.
While the Tekken absurdity has been somewhat diluted, you could still confidently describe this game as being over the top, but more in line with an over-stylized and underwritten action movie of the era. Bryce, your first boss, is an obnoxious schoolyard bully that goes through the trouble of leading Nina to a spring-trapped gladiatorial ring lined with swords, but also isn't interested in some kind of honorable duel, so he's still just gonna use the guns. He set the table for a king's feast and then said, you know what, let's just get the Caniac combo meal tonight. I'm trying to get this over with quick and then hate myself for the rest of the night. A kick sends Bryce stumbling backwards into a pointy hazard, dealing a mortal blow. He survives long enough to mumble some profound closing sentiments that may have meant more if I knew a single thing about this guy before he got ganked like a Winchester.
It's so bright.
If you ever find yourself questioning who someone is, what their goals are, or why this covert special op is so disorganized and weird, I will say they are doing a thing. But it's not a thing that excuses all of that. Alan gives Nina a call and explains who that guy you just roundhoused into a wall knife even was. He describes them as weapons smugglers that have been arming terrorists, and they are possibly remnants of a former communist nation. Source? I don't know. Killing Bryce sends the ship's security into a frenzy, requiring Nina to evade them to meet up with Alan. The two fight one of a dozen groups of Kometa guards, proving their abilities to one another. He gives some context to one of the scenes in the game's opening. Recently, a Kometa ship was destroyed with a force comparable to a nuclear bomb, and footage of this event has been posted on the internet. This raises concerns that these weapons they are smuggling are big-type weapons. In their proper introduction, they amusingly have Alan make note of the fact that Nina isn't using a pseudonym on this top-secret anti-terrorist spy mission. I find this interaction to be one of very few intentional comedy beats that kind of works, but unfortunately my memory of it is also colored by the segment X-Play did on it, where they kept replaying Alan's grunt over and over as evidence of the game's hammy voice acting.
I guess this will keep the attention of 13-year-old boys. And this guy. The game has something to do with finding things on the ship.
Look at these gamers, living atop 2005's shit mountain, just clipping my man out of context. They didn't have anything to say about the lingering shot of Nina's foot in Alan's face. This game is a comedy softball.
We'll talk later.
You think I liked editing that? No, I did it to prove a point. Alan officially passes off the goal of recording the meeting of criminal leaders to Nina.
Listen, make sure to keep a low profile.
Thankfully, in this stylish meeting room, someone has left out a dossier explaining what we're up against. What'll it be, you reckon? It could be anything. It could be an army of Rogers.
What is that thing? That's Roger.
If you would not like to have the rest of this game's plot spoiled and would like to experience it on your own, or you just can't bear to hear the torrid details of Nina's quest to stop some guys from doing something for somebody for some kind of game, then skip to this time, won't you? Otherwise, stay exactly where you are. Don't move! If you're gonna breathe, breathe quietly.
I feel nothing but a cold spirit in you, just like a devil.
You want to know why? You see that? Last week I decided to shave my chest. All the best fighters do it, so why not me? Well, for 2 days I was as smooth and slippery as an eel. I was wriggling around in my bathtub for hours, making glub glub noises. But then the itching started. It got so bad I would do anything to make it stop. So I sold my soul to the devil. The scar is from an unrelated accident. You know, it passes by in like a split second, but there's something quite imaginative about entering Lana's room through a fish tank. Like, it just happens without question over the course of like 5 seconds. It's never brought up again. But that's a pretty crazy way to enter a room. There has to have been like a movie that's done that before. What would I even look for? Movie, enter through fish tank.
definitely happens in Finding Nemo. The document concerns flammable ice, or literally frozen methane, that does exist in real life in large quantities under permafrost. As global warming becomes worse and worse, deposits of this can surface and cause catastrophic natural disasters like tsunamis and landslides. The game posits that if one could undergo the Herculean effort of collecting it, in theory, one could use it as a fuel source, even though it would be equally harmful, if not worse, for the environment than other fossil fuels. Something tells me the Cometa aren't in this to become the new wave of oil barons, and boringly accumulate unimaginable inhuman wealth passively from atop a corporate skyscraper. They'll probably do something more naively villainous, like kidnap the daughter of some country's prime minister and hold them for ransom, weaponizing this flammable ice into a sort of fart weapon. I foresee a lot of monologuing to boardrooms of worried political figures over a massive wall-mounted screen. You have 48 hours to agree to my terms, gentlemen. If not, things may get a little stinky. I think I inadvertently did like a Robert Stack there. Tonight's story involves dinosaur shit. While snooping around Lana's room to collect portions of her fingerprint, Nina notices an outfit in her closet that looks a lot like something she'd wear if, say, she had entered a fighting tournament, perhaps one where the winner is dubbed a Happy King. After fighting through a whole bunch of guys and evading a series of laser grids, Nina finds an appropriate bathroom in which to release her drone into a vent and spy on the Cometa meeting. In the meeting room, Enrique has betrayed his buddies and killed most of them, holding a sword to Lana, who taunts him and tells him he's not ready for Salacia, and that Edgar will come for him. After a standoff, she gets him to drop his guard, and as soon as there's an opening, throws a smoke bomb. As the ship's fire alarm blares, Enrique makes a dash for the helipad, leaving a trail of dead bodyguards in his path. All the characters converge at the only helicopter off the ship. Lana stops Enrique from taking off in it, and Nina makes a wild card play and attempts to rush both, immediately getting shot with a stun gun of some sort. Lana seems a lot more upset about Bryce's death than I think anyone figured she would be, and sends Nina into a psychological torment realm, awakening a retconned traumatic childhood memory of a tiny Nina alone in the wreckage of a plane crash. But this becomes nightmarish as the corpse of her father becomes zombified and lurches for her. As weird as it may seem, I think this is when the game got its hooks in me. Up until now, its identity wasn't really pronounced, and I felt like it wasn't successfully a Metal Gear spy thriller or a broad melodramatic brawler like Tekken, but its willingness to have this boss fight take place entirely within a childhood trauma in which you have to protect Nina's childhood self from zombies while making time to break the skull, ribcage, and femur of a pale ninja witch was my kind of schlock. Oh, by the way, if I may I? Thank you. I've been conditioned to read into every inclusion of another piece of literature or mythology in a game, so naturally I began to wonder if the creators were implying some parallel to Romeo and Juliet, as their image is centered in the Cometa boardroom. But I soon determined that I would have to do a lot of my own work to make that headcanon, and Occam's razor would suggest that it means nothing, but I will admit, we killed Lana's secret lover, who at the very least had a Lerman-esque quality to him with his dual swords. Nina defeats but does not kill Lana, and is conscious long enough to toss herself into the chopper alongside Enrique, much to his confusion. The first of a few connections to Tekken's continuity appears in a continuation of Nina's flashback. We see soldiers beating up her father and dragging away a second little girl that is conveniently color-coded and thus easy to deduce as her sister Anna. This is the first relevant thing, I should say. Up until now, you may have caught sight of things like an army recruitment poster with a jack on it, which, if this is taking any lore into account, would mean this is a Russian army recruitment poster. There's also just posters for Tekken 4 and individual characters like Julia, so yeah, you try and figure that one out. Game takes place in like the future of 1993 or some shit. When Nina comes to, she is in some kind of ruined prison cell, strapped to a chair and being electrocuted by Enrique's goons. This only seemed to pose a problem as long as she was stuck in her flashback, so she just kind of stands up like, well, I'm up now. I sense the game seeming to remember that other forms of storytelling are possible, and it spends some time in this grimy military fortress turned prison as you collect journals written by its former inmates, all of which are barely aware of why they've been brought there, and outline various forms of torture and figures disappearing or attempting to escape only to die before they reach the mainland, whichever mainland that might be. Still not a political game, by the way, which is honestly kind of harrowing, but hard to connect with, as there are still so many foundational ideas playing out that I don't really understand or am not yet following. It sort of feels like this chapter was written by a different person. Back during the boat times, Nina was borderline mute, but expressed a great deal of sassiness and attitude in just the physicality of her character. Suddenly, after being electroshocked out of a flashback, she's become quippy.
I just broke out of the cell. The room service was really bad.
That's a funny clip. I should use that more often. It's weird that nobody has. Once Nina gets her equipment back, she hears from Alan, who reports that by all accounts, Kometa is finished after the events aboard the ship, leaving the sole objective, find out what Salacia is, and, I don't know, stop it? Eat it? Who knows? Gotta know what a thing is before I can figure out all what to do with it. The chaps back at HQ have learned that a scientist named Lucas Hayes is in this prison, and is in part responsible for the downfall of Kometa, and definitely responsible for leaking that video of a ship blowing up on the internet. So he'll need to be interrogated for information about Salacia. But before that, some new guys appear. Alan informs you that this is Tekken Force, the private army of Mishima Zaibatsu, and they are acting as reinforcements for Enrique, as Nina has already cut her way through the majority of his rent-a-cop force, I guess. Beneath the prison is a torture chamber in the most literal archetypical sense. Picture one, it's that. Even though Lucas betrayed his arms dealer buddies and attempted to keep an experimental weapon from their clutches, the first words out of his mouth make it clear that he's still an asshole, with no plans on switching sides, so much as switching bidders. And even after we close the books on this whole Salacia deal, he ain't going nowhere. He'll probably be promoted and given a lab in a US-occupied territory. He makes a deal to spill all he knows if Nina can bust him out, but doing so requires a scan of Enrique's prints.
I don't know who you're with, but... Wait, don't tell me you're alone. You can't be serious.
Oh, maybe it's just a Pavlovian Metal Gear response, but I absolutely expected this to cut to a 15-minute history lesson. By the time Nina catches up with Enrique, he's holding a video call thanking Heihachi for lending him his Tekken Force, which will ensure their victory, but amusingly, he's not even interested in whatever cornball scheme to take control of an experimental weapon that these goobers are up to. His interest was only in testing the skill of his warriors, and when Nina drops down from cover, he immediately eyeballs her like a potential rare Pokemon. Ooh, get that one! I want that one! It's got good stats! The two fight, and if we're taking the events of gameplay as truth, Nina breaks nearly every bone in Enrique's body, with the exception of the ones that would be required for him to run away with his life. He's saved from defeat by Anna, who leaps to his rescue and knocks down an exhausted Nina. My sister Anna. She was my sister. Anna was her name. I'm Nina. After swiping a print from the scabbard of Enrique's katana, Nina returns to Lucas and frees him from his cell. He reveals that the lab in which Salacia was built sits beneath them, and until now was flooded with VX gas to keep the Kometa from it. After Lucas's betrayal, they removed his security access, so Nina is gonna have to fight more guys or whatever. So after we work our way back to the roof of the prison and restore Lucas's clearance, Nina makes the baffling choice of then radioing Lucas to meet her at the elevator, hopefully following the same path she took, crawling through ancient sewer tunnels and shimmying across pipes above perilous drops. While he leads us to the lab, Enrique, Anna, and the Tekken Force are also headed to the same place, but so is a Terminator, I don't know yet. Alan, whose purpose and utility in this mission is rapidly fading from memory, radios Nina to give her a map of the underground lab and warn her that a new threat has appeared and it's ripping apart red shirts. Prior to this next sequence, when we meet up with Lucas at the elevator and all that, there was a highly redundant shootout sequence where Nina has to snipe dozens of guys from a perch above the prison, which instilled in me a false confidence that the game was going to have a babysit Lucas mission. But yeah, it's fine, I got my eye on him. I can protect him from Heihachi's shit ninjas. As long as we stick together, we won't have to— Fuck!
Damn! You ain't gonna be in Rush Hour 3.
That's more like it.
That was just one of the barks that Anna cycles through. Just launched into the void. Now we're talking! The two sisters have a brief fight that is interrupted by a big robot dropping onto the bridge and destroying it, throwing Anna down into an abyss, leaving her fate unknown. Or there's a pile of sandbags down there and she's fine. I don't know why I'm surprised. It's not like anyone in this franchise has ever been seriously injured by gravity. The robot is clearly more interested in Lucas and continues to hunt him down through a series of maze-like tunnels. Using a control center, we help him evade the robot and find some means to bypass the blocked exit, which winds up being his own person, resulting in a line read that could only exist in the blissful idiocy of the mid-2000s.
Now listen carefully. The way out of the tunnel is blocked. You're gonna have to pry it open yourself.
Jeez, you know, we gotta start making Nina's tactical sneaking suit out of whatever material this guy's dress shirt is made out of. It's held up through 2 falls and a robot chase. I mean, I know we've been fighting guys with swords and whatnot, but your shit's not even wrinkled. Is this science? What is this? In Lucas's lab, he can finally explain just what Salacia is. It's a satellite that can select parts of the ocean and activate frozen methane. This causes an eruption of gas bubbles and magnetism that drags ships under. It does this by sending radiation to bacteria on the ocean floor that heats up and ignites the methane. This is off topic, but I'd just like to remind you that this is a Tekken spin-off. The Kometa canceled this project when they realized that at the push of a button, all of the frozen methane could be ignited. If so, the Earth would be catastrophically affected, oxygen sucked out of the oceans, sending a torrent of gas upwards that would annihilate the ozone layer. They realized they were building an off button for the planet, which has a really limited number of uses. You can tell that Lucas is bitter about them pulling the plug on this idea, and he starts slinking off on his own. I couldn't tell you why the winning draft of a Nina spin-off had to include an explanation for the Bermuda Triangle, but I do feel like it didn't come from nowhere, because Nina has always had a combo named Bermuda Triangle. So either this was a card held onto for a long time, or they didn't do much consideration beyond opening the manual and going, God, what are we gonna even fucking write about? Oh, I got it. This area makes clear the last substantial connection to the Tekken verse. We find a journal from another scientist that once worked here, designing the robot that just attacked us. One Dr. Geppetto Boskanovich, the creator of the character Jack and all his variations, as well as the guy who would one day go on to cryogenically freeze Nina. Named Geppetto because he is a Geppetto-like figure that brought life to a robot that developed an attachment to another person, but also Boskanovich because he is Russian, so that's kind of what you get for naming him that. It's like naming someone a series of random numbers and letters and expecting them to grow up as anything other than full of resentment. Speaking of that robot, it does appear to be laying waste to soldiers and Tekken fighters alike in pursuit of Lucas. When we catch up to our guy, he's being held at gunpoint by Enrique. He wants something from him, and Lucas is refusing to give it up. While eavesdropping on this exchange, the robot emerges from a statue and engages in a fight with Nina. Forgotten main character Alan returns to help destroy the thing, but with perfect cartoon timing, it shoots out the thing that Enrique was looking for, presumably the controls for Salacia, and it lands right in Lucas's hands. I cannot stress this enough, but where has this guy been and what has he been doing? Aside from giving me a map that I didn't look at earlier, what has his utility been? Has he just been waiting in a broom closet while I saved the world?
Do it. Fist like Tekken.
jump, kick, foot tips, so you in a second. Ready for the battle. You can pick the weapons.
Enrique makes Lucas use Salacia to destroy a ship and helicopter belonging to... I gotta be honest, if they implied or said that anywhere, I missed it. That may have been our guys or remnants of the Cometa. It's hard to tell through the still beautiful but slightly primitive cutscene animation just what expression Lucas is supposed to be displaying here. But one would hope it's a sort of "what hath I wrought, now I am become death" kind of expression. Nina and Enrique face off one last time, resulting in the Master Swordsman being punched in the nuts so many times he dies. In perhaps a parallel to Bryce's death, he checks out our hero, finding some kind of Zen state before the internal hemorrhaging causes his organs to fail and he dies twitching in a pool of his own juices. After all the near-death scrapes Lucas has made it through, he runs out of luck and into Lana, who has her henchmen promptly shoot him without a word. An anticlimactic punctuation mark. Befitting an awful prick, he leaves behind a journal that explains the robot being set loose was his idea. He hated Boskanovich for receiving all the attention on his robot projects, so on his way out, he let one loose to cause chaos and protect the controls for Salacia. When we find his body, it appears he was only shot in the leg, but in a scene cruelly robbed from us, he was also hit with an axe. Alan lets you know that Lana will be headed back to the Amphitrite, so we should make our way to the helipad. There's tough resistance from Tekken Force, but Nina and Alan manage to fly out with a pissed off Anna glaring at them, left behind with one less boss. Because the artists of Death by Degrees would have to really stretch both their creativity and the limits of what a general audience would accept if Nina's outfit sustained any more damage, they generously give her a new sneaking suit. This is one of those things that is considerate in theory, but maybe the wrong team to give that sort of green light to, because now it very much stands as a reflection of someone's thing. Not to performatively trot out terms like male gaze, but I think there is something sort of disempowering or devaluing about how the developers chose to treat Nina in her own game. In Tekken proper, both Nina and Anna are sexualized for sure, but it's married to their character. They own it in a way that is badass. They will crush you and saunter off, leaving an innuendo-laden quip. Tekken Nina is a girl boss and knows it.
Some call me Raven, the dark talon of death.
I'm Nina. No one who finds out my name lives.
I think characters like that are a lot of fun. It also helps that the franchise has had a very diverse cast of sexualized characters, so it might appeal to more than the stinky boy demographic. But in Death by Degrees, all the ways in which she is sexualized are out of her hands. She doesn't get to do any sassy victory poses or say anything like,
"Finished already? Please."
It's all just stuff happening to her. Her suit just arbitrarily starts getting deleted, and the devs find convenient camera angles for upskirts and shit that's just kind of lame. Anyway, this new suit is made out of Lucas's shirt, so from this point forward, the game grows up a little bit.
Continue. 8.
As Alan and Nina approach the ship, its defenses kick in, and their helicopter is shot down, so she bails out, and through physics not of this plane, somehow winds up in the bridge on her feet, with clothing intact. A breathtaking example of the era's best tendencies. Couldn't she land in the water near the ship and wade over to it? It would still be pretty impressive if she landed in some kind of rough, heroic manner, sustaining perhaps a few cuts and bruises. No, let's have her do something that I can't even explain without storyboards, the wide shot of which would look insane. Alan's not responding over radio, but more pressing are the strange cyborgs using Jack's moveset that have been activated. For the retread of the Amphitrite, the plot takes a backseat for a while as the game almost morphs in genre, sloughing off layers of spy thriller and quippy one-liners, blinking wall-eyed as it attempts to follow through with all those incomplete puzzles and locked doors. Still wanting an escalation of difficulty, enemy mobs are replenished stronger and more frequently, patrolling areas that you had already fought in. But something Death by Degrees has been doing all along, that I really appreciated, is giving very simple lampshades and excuses for why this is happening. Someone will announce a shift change or finish a conversation that started off screen as though they were just sent there, or one of a number of bits of dialogue to express to you these are different guys from the guys you killed earlier.
Oh man, I shouldn't have had those burritos.
This area will eat up a substantial amount of your playthrough time, as you'll be bouncing back and forth between different points of the ship to collect keys and unlock medallions, and also you'll bounce around because the robots will just fucking juggle you like you're a squeaky rubber ball for a stampede of energetic puppies. Continuing a theme of Resident Evil plundering, beneath the boat is a basement laboratory. Well, I guess it's still part of the boat. It's not under the boat. It's a lower part of the boat you didn't know was there. It's... Fuck you. Inside is the ghoulish truth of the sausage's origins. These robots we've been fighting are reanimated bodies brought back with mad science and kung fu downloaded onto their brains. This was the purpose of the fighting tournament that Nina entered. It was to select viable candidates for cyborgification. This is why the Komeda executives protected Nina from their own guards in the game's opening. Just environmentally, we can deduce that there were 6 executives, which included Lana and Enrique, and that even though they were killed in an act of corporate betrayal, they do still plan on returning their remains to their respective homelands and families. Also, they've produced an unquantifiable number of these cyborgs, and they are loaded up onto capsules ready to be fired at their enemies, where instead of exploding like a much more cost-effective missile, a kung fu fighting robot will emerge. Eventually, we come across one of the flimsier plot elements in this contactless key, which is used to activate a series of other J-type robots, like the one that we had to punch until it stopped moving or asking if it would dream earlier. A journal near the key makes vague mention of Bryce telling the guard meant to keep track of the key that the robots are part of a game where people try to collect cases and retrieve an item from within. I guess Lucas made use of this pinata-like quality with the first one by hiding Salatia's controls in it, and now we have to run back to the 3 we've already seen and collect Chinese chess pieces from them in order to unlock the way to Lana's bedroom. Video game puzzles, especially those set in some kind of mansion or Art Deco cruise ship, aren't meant to be examined so closely, because all of them are at the very least impractical. You're telling me every time Lana wants to take a nap, she has to walk up to one of these battle bots and... Wait a minute. Wait.
What's that robot doing?
It's...
What's it doing?
I'll tell you when you're older.
Understood. I have modified my internal clock to 40 years from now. Is this sufficient?
No.
Understood. I have modified my internal clock to 70 years from now. Is this sufficient?
No, but how does it feel to be a boomer?
Systems are nominal, readouts unchanged.
That's good to hear.
Although, I have stronger opinions on the way you choose to dress and present yourself.
Present myself?
Yes, I believe it to be indicative of an overall decline in morality and traditional values.
Oh, bump off, old man.
And why do you paint your nails? Have you joined the homosexual underground?
In her room, Bryce is laid out, covered in roses like some sort of mock wake, but next to him is also the control case for Salacia, placed so obviously and vulnerably that it's surely a trap, which it is. Lana once again gets in Nina's head and brings her back to that traumatic moment in her past, showing an ever so slight bit more of the scene. Her father was being forced at gunpoint to leave one of his daughters behind when a fight breaks out that leaves everyone dead. Again, the two fight while you're required to protect both young Nina and young Anna from zombies. This fight is kind of filler because it's the exact same fight as before with one new variable, but not far from now there will actually be the logical logical cap to fighting Lana. When Lana is defeated, Alan enters the room with his gun ready, and she calls him Edgar before he shoots. Thankfully, Nina can put together that Alan has been Edgar Grant, the mysterious missing Cometa executive, all along. I really needed her to come through with the memory here because, well, honestly, I'm still working out what this guy was up to the whole fucking game. So all this time, he's not been an MI6 sneaker, but a Cometa sweeper that is working to make the entire debacle with Salacia disappear after Lucas's sabotaging of the project. He killed John, the real sneaker that Nina was meant to work with, and has been sort of using her only as long as their goals were aligned. She led him to Lucas where he could kill him and pass it off as Lana killing him. Originally, she was supposed to assume he died in the helicopter crash, but things got complicated and now he's gonna have to write her out of the story as well. That is until Lana gets back up and shoots Edgar several times before limping off with the case. In one of the final nods to Tekken, in Lana's room you can take a sword from a display case called Manji Sword, Manji being the clan that the character Yoshimitsu served as leader of. This character and Dr. Boskanovich did cross paths in Tekken 2, when Yoshimitsu broke into a laboratory at Mishima Zaibatsu to steal the doctor's perpetual engine technology, but wound up losing an arm instead. After playing through this game 3 times, I can better see how much work they do to foreshadow and obfuscate Alan being Edgar, beyond the fact that it simply seemed like a twist Death by Degrees would not be above. Now, are there numerous logic leaps and details that make this crumble apart the more you think about it? Sure. But much the same could be said about any number of things. Why does Sonic the Hedgehog need to drive a car? Nobody wants to admit that most things exist as they do because they just do. One detail that I began to find interesting, perhaps out of behavioral influence through long-term exposure to Tekken, was that Lucas's death was the result of, yes, in part, his own hubris and desire to be celebrated and respected, but Nina also inadvertently kills the only bad guy keeping him alive. Enrique understood Lucas. They both turned coat on their own after feeling underappreciated. Even after the mess Lucas created by releasing the robot, Enrique still tells Tekken Force to leave him alive. His dialogue, in its subtext, subtly implying that Lucas is just like him and he feels sorry for him.
He is just like me. I feel sorry for him.
Polka-dotted by bullet holes and reaching a peak of grief-stricken insanity, Lana limps up to a command terminal of sorts and begins to make Salacia target every major body of water on Earth, which goes without saying. Not a very tactical use of such a weapon. As Nina approaches to stop her, we have one last mental battle, in which she replaces the Russian zombies with multiples of Bryce and Enrique. I like the addition of massive flaming doll parts laid out like wreckage of a plane, as though she's letting her own mental state corrupt the nightmare she's made for Nina. Can confirm, we are in her attic, and there are indeed toys in it. After Lana is defeated, Nina uses the gold watch device Lucas had been holding all along to disarm and destroy Salacia. In, unless I'm mistaken, the game's singular act of sequel baiting, after the satellite blows up, the Amphitrite's alarm system starts blaring and making self-destruct announcements, which rouses the mortally wounded Lana from her place on the floor long enough to say, "It's him," meaning Edgar. The scene of him getting shot is the last time he is shown. However, if you return to Lana's bedroom, his body is missing. You know what they should have done was have Bryce wake up during this scene. Then we could make the Romeo and Juliet thing work in a Frankenstein way. He comes out to find Lana and has a weepy, mournful reaction, making a vow for revenge that is interrupted by... Writing is so easy when you don't have to worry about any other part of a game's development. I think my feelings on this game's plot were sort of lukewarm until that shootout between the two, because everything feels sort of grand and relentless after that. I was actually kind of pumped as the ship was beginning to blow up bit by bit. All the robots were triggered and attempting to impede Nina from entering that pod launching system we saw earlier. The ship is so damaged that she doesn't even make it off, rolling out onto the deck. A helicopter quickly swings by and drops a rope, but before she can grab on, Anna appears and knocks her down. The two face off against each other once more, while flaming wreckage spews out of the cruise ship, and they really wring all the epicness out of this they could. It's occasionally interrupted by the fighting continuing in cutscene form, where neither sister really seems to be clearly winning, just equally beating the shit out of each other. That is until Nina gets her back with that double open palm move that Anna surprised her with earlier. The ship begins to officially collapse, nearly throwing both into the water, but Nina catches her sister. In that moment, they lock eyes, and Nina has a clear memory of their father's death. These soldiers were going to take Anna from him, but he makes a grab for one of their guns and manages to take out the majority of them. But he's knocked down, throwing the gun at little Nina's feet. He tells her to pick it up, not remembering that she's a dumb little baby and the gun is probably just as big as her. A wounded soldier picks it up instead and manages to hit both his buddy and Nina's father, leaving the two girls alone in the snow. As Nina cries, Anna holds her hands. It's goofy, but I think a sweet way to cap off this game and an unabashedly Tekken choice. Both sisters take turns holding the other up, and Anna only lets go of Nina when she's close to her approaching crew. I think this is an admirable and pretty fun way of reshaping and presenting the core idea of these two characters and their complex long-running conflict, taking it more seriously by omitting all the times they just slapped each other or distributed each other's nudes. Beneath the blurry shape of its world-ending terrorist plot, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, in order to instill terror, there's gotta be someone left to feel it, right? There is a faint but noticeable emotional thread tying things together. Still, there is something unfulfilling to 15-year-old me that had longed to know more about these characters. This strikes me more as a beginning, as a toe in the water for a franchise expansion, and not really the story of Nina and Anna. Not even that it wasn't what I'd hoped her story would be, but that it just wasn't her story. She's always on screen, and yet the game doesn't seem all that interested in who she is. There are bookends that explore perhaps the turning point that led to who they are, but that's like a main with no sides. There's nothing complementing it. It's honestly sort of baffling that someone thought to take a character whose whole journey involves amnesia and a frayed relationship with her sister, then gives her an antagonist that weaponizes memory to harm and terrorize others, and you don't just make that the entire premise of the game. You could have Nina both learn about her missing past and confront its trauma by kicking its ass. Maybe some ancient Sumerian god allows Lana's visions to manifest in reality, and Nina has to make an uneasy alliance with Anna in order to stop this unresolved grief physically and psychologically and save Craggy Isle from its wrath. I don't know. We're just talking here. I'm just saying I had a lot of time to imagine what it would be like if any of these characters got their own game, and they were all much larger and weirder than this. But not without reason. This is a franchise where Blade can fight a f***ing kangaroo. Fuck me for thinking inside the box, I guess.
Kids, if you find a gun, stop.
On some base level, I'm glad I got to see what Namco would do with a game following a single Tekken character, regardless of it not looking anything like I'd imagined. I think it's a few set pieces shy of what it was aiming for, but it's still aiming for something that feels big, potentially world-ending even. Going into a Tekken spin-off, I can't say I expected exactly the Bermuda Triangle, Transformers, and a Psychic Witch. In between these broad, hard sci-fi ideas, there's a lot of somewhat mundane busywork, which keeps your mind locked in on small things like scanning fingerprints to unlock lockers and doing little puzzles to open hidden doors. It winds up only feeling big in cutscenes, which takes me back to that old Warren Spector quote that I'm not going to look up to confirm the wording of or make sure it was even him that said it. But if cool things are happening on screen, you should be the one doing them. I appreciate that there is a palpable reverence for the design and attitude of Nina, to the head scratching of many a fan. Namco clearly thought Nina is effortlessly badass and consistently interesting without question, worthy of holding up her own title, and thus the game largely feels like it's about what she can do and not who she is. All I've learned on that front is that, like me, she will ride with a piece of clothing until the bitter end. It's not terrible at world building, I think, solely out of just how much restraint it shows by not doing MCU level pandering to its audience. Having every scene be a dramatic reveal that will make you clap and point at the screen. Nina, we need you to track down another one of Boskanovich's science experiments. It's hard to explain over comms, but how do you feel about going down under? But tragically, I think that would have absolutely sold 15-year-old me on this. It's easy to see how annoying that would be today from the perspective of late-stage Marvel burnout, but it's a roster of action figures, and I wanted to see what they did outside of the strict confines of an arena. This was the time to go big and have interesting matchups set to goofy industrial rock bands, though I admit that last part's just for me. That's a personal request. Even the movie understood that you have to make her swing into a hotel room with an AK set to stabbing westward. I don't think it has anything to do with the choice of character. There are numerous avenues to explore with a character like Nina. In her cutscenes alone, countless things that could be the thing you hone in on and have fun with. She was trained by the IRA. She was cryogenically frozen, has a son that's the same age as her who's a boxer, who she was hired to assassinate because she's an assassin for hire. She was in a Hollywood film with her sister, which she blew up afterwards. On top of that, she's never really depicted as being a paragon of virtue. She's ambiguous in a sense, self-serving. For whatever reason, they decided to make her a mercenary for Team USA good guy number 1. That choice alone makes me feel like I know even less about her than before. If there was dialogue to the effect of, look, this is just a paycheck and an adrenaline rush, I'm not picking teams here, I feel like she would come into focus more as the person hinted at over the course of a decade. I've compared its plot to the Metal Gear series earlier, but that's only aesthetically. It's just the inclusion of sneaking suits, espionage, terrorism, private militaries, experimental weapons, electroshock torture, digestive issues, ventilation shafts full of rats, robots, a blonde sniper, a sword-wielding villain, a villain with psychic powers, a sibling rivalry. The big difference is that Death by Degrees doesn't really have anything to say or reveal about its character. In Metal Gear Solid, obviously, you don't want the terrorist group to have a nuclear weapon, and at the end of the day, none of us should have these things, right? Also, you now know more about Snake's history and motivations, and how much of a deviant weirdo he is. In Death by Degrees, I assume Nina is there because she's being paid, so that's fine. And we want to stop these maybe ex-Soviet guys, maybe, we don't even know for sure, from having a global warming button because we're dead set on destroying the planet in the same slow burn way we've been doing all along and continue to do. I hate to say it, but I think we needed a 20-minute cutscene where we drop the controller and just watch a nerd explain who everyone is and what they want and why you should care. I see no other alternative beside better writing, and that just doesn't seem like constructive criticism. Death by Degrees is a beat-em-up brawler game at heart that wants to dabble in other shades of gameplay. But without question, this is the thing they needed to nail in order for the game to work. Did they nail it? According to most, no. The hammer swung down and kind of ricocheted off the edge of the nail head and pinched a finger or two. The largest point of contention was the very idea of its combat controls not using the 4 face buttons and instead opting for an, at the time, novel method that required manipulating both analog sticks, with the left being used to dodge and the right being used to hit. Both are initiated by sort of feathering the stick, flicking it like some sort of rubbery bean. Forget I wrote that. I can certainly see why this simply would not do it for some, but I also think it could work just fine in concept. There are moments where you feel like you're dominating in a fight, making use of a bunch of well-animated flips and combos, but at no point did it resemble the gameplay shown in the opening montage, which leads me to believe that there's a very specific way this game was meant to be played, and whatever that is, I'm not doing that. And as an addendum to the control scheme, this is all made worse by the decision to have the game use fixed camera angles that are impossible to anticipate when they'll switch. The issue with the camera is so consistent and clear that, again, the only explanation I can imagine is that there's a very, very particular way this game was meant to be played, and the fellers what made it are holding that information captive. They are gatekeeping that harder than the time I posted a skitty puppy track on r/goth. The amount of times I would unleash a series of attacks on a guy, only to have the camera change on me, thus changing which direction is which on the analog sticks, and then I try to back up and return to the camera angle I was at before, only to move too far into another camera angle. I lost count.
Enemy contact. They've got me pinned.
They must have realized the potential for this because they included the ability to hold down R2, which gives you control of the camera with the right analog. But that's your means of attack, so what you can do now is if you see an enemy, you swipe towards them while holding R2 and that targets them. So yeah, you can go after that one guy, but once you knock him down and he's got iframes, you're still locked on him. So you flick over to another enemy and wail on them? That's a lot of weird shit to think about when you're being attacked from all angles. The reality is, fighting with the control scheme feels fine when the camera angle isn't changing on you and you're not fussing with a bunch of buttons that have only ever done the things they are doing in this singular video game. Oh, also sometimes you'll go to press R2 and it just says no. This is not to condemn it for experimenting. Experimentation is neat, but you also have to make sure that any of this is intuitive enough to stick. It only happens twice, but twice at least you'll have to work a crank or wheel lock of some kind, and it requires you to work the analog in a circular motion, and that's one of a few kind of quirky and inoffensive functions. But why only twice? 2 is a weird number. It's not enough to be a pattern. It makes me overthink why it was only twice. Opportunities for stealth gameplay are there should you wish to pursue them. This is mostly confined to creeping up behind lone soldiers and snapping their neck before they can radio in reinforcements. But make no mistake, the foundation has not been laid for a stealth playthrough.
I guess it was nothing.
Who's there? Who's there?
Enemies will frequently drop both melee weapons and guns, and both can be used by Nina. Some are more effective on others. Obviously, if you use a sword on a normal Kometa grunt, you can probably one-shot them, but they become more resilient to that the further up the chain you go. Though their design is a bit samey, there is an array of different enemy types with different attacks and behaviors. There's even some that are just bigger than the regular guys, and that is taken into account. Like, you can't sneak up behind them and stealth execute because of their George Fisher neck. They just throw you off them, forcing you to tire them out with weaker attacks. It also somewhat addresses the fact that action movie heroes never really seem to be overwhelmed by groups of attackers, opting to line up single file to get their ass kicked. If a group of enemies is too big and you lose sight of Nina, they could grab her and just hold her captive for other dudes to wail on her. There are ways out of grapples and a variety of flashy, evasive maneuvers you can unlock gradually. The game really undersells the importance of gaining EXP to unlock moves, but it adds a lot of variety to what would otherwise be monotonous kick sessions. I know, because the first time I played through this, I didn't look at the screen once until the last boss fight, where I spent 15 minutes just cashing in all my points. Weapons are also locked behind these honeycomb locks that are essentially less coherent slide puzzles. Very rarely did I feel like whatever was in these one-off boxes was worth the time wasted trying to work out the puzzle. I gotta sit here stumped by this baby puzzle, all so I can unlock a suitcase gun? Which does what? But the larger and more difficult puzzles unlock weapon cabinets that you might have to return to keep filling out your slots. Weapon holsters are found in silver cases or in lockers that are unlocked by collecting fingerprint scans from certain corpses, which is too clever an idea to not just be the main way you find inventory upgrades and weapons. That's a fleshed out in-world idea, and the boxes are just patronizing. Eventually, you can unlock the ability to take weapons out of the hands of enemies, which makes some of the boxes even more useless. Enemies will also occasionally drop MREs and water bottles, which you will no doubt find yourself pausing the game mid-air to pump Nina full. I can't even imagine how many calories this lady burns through. She's gotta be heating up those mains like non-stop. They may as well build an FRH into her suit. Using these as health and focus items respectively is not entirely clever or original, but what did intrigue me was the choice to have a variety of items that will give you various stat boosts and buffs that are like essential oils or something? Little perfume bottles you spritz on yourself that do something or other. I think the idea of them being what they are is cute, but I gotta be honest, not a single time did I pay attention to what these even were. Sometimes I just used them because I felt embarrassed for not using them. Back when I was less good at this game, I found myself prioritizing picking up MREs instead of defeating enemies, which puts you in a real desperate feeling place. I was really fiending for these things, dodging enemies and anxiously scrambling around, trying to pick them up like some kind of beef ravioli junkie. Gotta pick this up, and this one, and this. Get over here. Oh wait, I just gotta. No! It's the same button to pick up things and open the door. A big selling point that was admittedly pretty clever was the inclusion of X-rayed critical attacks. Before franchises like Mortal Kombat and Sniper Elite would seemingly hoist their entire game on this one function, Death by Degrees included it as something of an afterthought. As you deal damage and take damage, your focus meter will slowly build up and eventually fill blocks. Once you have a full block, you can initiate a critical attack, which slows down time, displaying an X-ray of your opponent and areas that are currently vulnerable to attack. If you can mark one with a cursor before time runs out, Nina will attack there and potentially break a dude's femur, shatter their skull, or completely annihilate their fucking ribcage. It's actually quite gruesome, but strangely, like Mortal Kombat, none of this damage seems to actually be represented outside of X-ray. So though you've broken someone's bones, causing catastrophic damage and internal bleeding, once they get back up, they still got the same amount of fight in them. Death by Degrees is occasionally a very difficult game because of its combat, but after playing it 3 times, I think less so. The first time, certainly, there were dozens of embarrassing fights with like a random optional mob. I'd just be going about my business, not too concerned with my last save point, varying one puzzle piece to another, and then out of nowhere just get my shit rocked by a bunch of guys. Guys I handled without breaking a sweat earlier. After a while, it begins condescendingly asking you if you want to change the difficulty to beginner, because you're a little baby that can't make it past this fucking shimmy obstacle course. And then you have to deny the defibrillator, deny a difficulty change, and say, yes, I want to try again. The amount of post-death button presses doesn't help how frustrating the game can be. By the 3rd time, this was minimized a great deal, and not only did I better understand how to fight, but knew that there were many encounters I didn't need to bother with. I had such a stockpile of MREs and defibrillators that I didn't care what was happening to me. Yeah, go ahead and slice me up. I'll just juice myself, and then I got fucking penne with spicy tomato sauce eaten up. This, however, did not change how much I struggled anytime they had me climb past some kind of hazard. I had to climb back up this goddamn ladder and make it halfway across these pipes so many times that it would be impossible to be anybody's fault but my own. Doing this sent me through the 5 stages of grief, but they were all denial and anger back and forth. Fuck! Oh, you got... No. Wait, I want to go back! Enemies will repopulate areas, but rarely without pointedly telling you, or adding new blocking for them, which, again, I found quite considerate. It can feel a little deflating to return to an area where you had an epic battle with 5 guards, only to find them back patrolling as though it never happened, gaslighting you into believing there isn't a time loop we're all caught in, stuck repeating the same shit over and over until a black hole takes us all. So, it's fun that you'll see a clearly different group of guys carrying out a new conversation, or doing something the last guys weren't, like looking for one's missing badge, or just dancing like nobody's watching, and dying in a similar manner. In a strange turn, the final stage is a retread of the first, only now you'll be focused on the numerous puzzles that we previously shrugged our shoulders at, assuming it to not be that type of game, but it turns out the game is willing to indulge in Resident Evil's flavor of Baroque puzzle design. Our enemies ever willing to engage in opulent acts of paranoia, where one must vaguely understand a Greek myth or piece of classical music in order to open the downstairs pisser. Death by Degrees masters none of its trades, and thus none of these challenge you deeper than testing your willingness to look at a document you picked up and then back at the puzzle. The sequence where you have to guide Lucas out of a cave while he's being chased is one of the more successful puzzles that will feel tense, but you'll probably still get through it on the first try. One of a few moments that made me feel like an enraged guidance counselor. Why aren't you always doing stuff like this, game? What's wrong with you? Just pick something and be good at it. You can be maces, I don't care. In fact, if you figured out how to make this fun, I would give you a fucking award. There are a few segments where you have to control your spy drone, and those are so close to bordering on interesting that I was on the edge of my seat. It seemed to escalate, adding obstacles that could crush the drone, or patrolling guards that could shoot it down, but this was kind of deflated by them never doing this again. Seriously, you're changing your major again? Okay, to what? English? Is that why you included all of those bullshit references to Shakespeare and Greek mythology? They have to mean something. I'm on your side. I'm just trying to get you to be the best you can be, you know?
Call for you on line 1.
Who is it?
Boojing Guide, the Forsaken City.
Oh, don't even get me started. And he reclined in his chair, for there were no more places to take this bit. 2005 to 2006 was a time of great leaps in the design and graphic quality of games. As such, Death by Degrees can look a bit out of step with other games like Shadow of the Colossus or Resident Evil 4, not helped by the often drab and uniform places this game likes to take you. But that's not to say there isn't a great deal of impressive work in bringing the game to life. Every once in a while, I'd come across a room with noticeably more detail and set design. The height of this attention to detail is probably Lana's room, which is packed with old dolls and ornate decoration, so much so that it looks like it was transplanted from another game entirely. Compare either to one of a million concrete corridors or abandoned labs. There is filler, but after you complete the game, you unlock an array of concept art, and seeing drawings of these places that were almost one-to-one exactly recreated was pretty impressive. Certain areas are an insane thing to pull from the ether and then put in a game, but you know, not every room can be an arena lined with blades atop a cruise ship pool. The design of the J-robots is itself pretty impressive because they are all slightly different and do different things, but each is a complicated looking device that needs to be mobile, make a variety of attacks, and also fold back up into the monolithic shape when they're done. And at least from a glance, it looks convincing. It looks like you wouldn't want to get your fingers caught anywhere in this thing. Looks like it would be annoying to have to kick it until it breaks, and goddamn if it sure was. I think there is more going on under the hood than one would think for the PS2, because having played it on console and emulated, there are a few moments where the console version would lag, especially when there was a big group of robots or something. Something is happening to push the PS2 to its limits. What it is, I'm not sure, but it requires a lot of loading screens. Look, I'm a patient guy. I can withstand load time, but it's truly comedic how many times you'll walk through a door, load screen, oh, it's a cutscene, cool. The cutscene ends, load screen. We again take control of Nina, walk forward a single step, load screen. I'm not even mad, I'm curious. Like, what's going on behind the curtain that's making that necessary? The dev team was clearly infatuated with the design of Nina in a way both endearing and off-putting. I have real mixed feelings on her treatment in this game, and the compliments I do have need to be chiseled out of limestone to reach. But once we get there, I did appreciate the physicality of Nina's motion capture animation. There is a particular way she carries herself that is somewhat realistic for the time. I think it's unfortunate that this is what I had to examine in order to intuit her attitude and personality, but it's nonetheless well done, even outside of the acrobatic fight moves. Some that come to mind are the fanciful, ladylike way she gets out of this chair after transferring some information to HQ, and the way she lands certain jumps. They look weighted and kind of rough on her knees, as I imagine they would be in heels. In an almost self-aware way, we see Nina idly reckoning with what her creators have dressed her in, as she fusses with her outfit and tries to pull it out of her ass. Other noteworthy visuals can be summed up in a section of the video titled Red Roundup! Well, if it ain't our old pals, the rat! Good news first. There are many rats to be seen in this game, if you can catch them. They're quick, they're blurry, they're shooting out of broken crates, and more interestingly, scurrying around in vents and hoarding gold coins. A document found on the ship explains that they are a special breed of rat that likes to collect shiny objects. So when they see Nina barreling into their habitat betwixt the walls, they get spooked and run for their stash, inadvertently leading you to their pot of gold coins, singular. The amount of these you collect determines how many items you are awarded in New Game Plus. These rats tended to be difficult to see while playing on console, so I played through the whole game on an emulator in order to capture more compelling evidence of rats! The bad news? Well, it appears the crew of the Amphitrite have been eating the rats, which we do not award points for. One can even find a rat ready to be added to a stew with an accompanying recipe nearby. Some would say that the fact that a rat is featured in the game outweighs the grisly fate some of them will meet, and to that, I'd have to agree and award these rats my highest rat roundup rating. Good. The game's credits actually don't list the voice cast, but rest assured, despite what G4 would have you think, the English voice cast for Death by Degrees is in a good to serviceable range. They certainly spared no expense on it, with only a few characters bringing a larger energy that can be a bit hammy. Nearly every character is given a veteran voice actor of both anime and video games.
Sorry to disappoint you, but I prefer guns.
Nina's voice actor from Tekken, Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, follows her into this new venture, and the fact that she sounds like her gruff, cocksure self certainly goes a long way, even though she rarely elects to say much.
Any civilians?
None, just them.
Well, that simplifies things.
McGlynn is of course a prolific voice actor, appearing in many great things, over 300 gigs, most significant to me being her vocal performances in the soundtracks for most of the Silent Hill series. I will say, this game isn't exactly a showcase of her talent. And it's sorely missing a spy thriller theme song that she could have belted out over the course of an afternoon probably. Steve Blum, another one of those guys who are in everything, plays Enrique.
Damn! I am an idiot!
But honestly, the biggest and weirdest performance comes from Michelle Ruff as Lana. That character called for a big performance.
Everybody dies someday! No, no, no! There is no escape!
A real out-there performance for someone I primarily know to be a sagely little kitty cat.
You want me to take it off? Okay.
Lana is a fun character, and her scenes are heightened by her deranged theme music that is like a mix of psycho horror stabs and tribalistic drumming. Oh, about the music, I don't have any solid means of determining who did the soundtrack to this game. There's no credit for something like music or composer. There's just sound, which could mean a lot of things. There's one person named Takashi Nakagawa that is credited with both audio and camera, which implies a great many things. I might be thanking them for providing rather fun rock instrumentals for fights, with chunky bass being a running motif, but I may also blame them for making those badass moments occasionally infuriating. It was giving notes of Faith No More. There are a number of fun tracks that are nothing like that, however. It's got an impressive amount of variety. In the bilge of the cruise ship, you'll come across this aquatic-sounding ambient drum and bass track. There's a lot of music, and it's very considerately chosen to fit the tone of each area or event it's used in. After you've completed the game once, you can unlock some bonus levels that you play as Anna, working to clean up the failure of Tekken Force for Heihachi. And even that is full of new tracks that are just as energetic and badass as the main game. Worth noting that Anna's mode is significantly harder than the base game because you can't save, enemies don't drop items, and they are tougher, and there are more of them, so the music stopped being a soundtrack for Anna and more so a fitting soundtrack for a bunch of dudes to swing me around like a child with a sticky hand toy. They should rename this sick-ass rock tune Anna's health bar rapidly depletes while something happens just off screen. In the January 2006 issue of Game Informer, this game would appear as the last entry on a roundup of the worst games of the previous year. Death by Degrees deserves a special achievement award in the field of most shameless debasement of a beloved franchise. And I think I disagree. I sense shame all over it. I sense the stinky cologne of desperation, a frantic aimlessness to it. I sense it grasping at whatever it can cling to prop itself up as a big boy game for big boys, cherry-picking mechanics and visuals from other games which sometimes, albeit rarely, hit their mark. There were so many plot threads and characters in Tekken to have fun with and dream with, so much money and technology at their disposal, yet it comedically slipped on a banana peel, producing a shame similar to my own shame struggling to play some of these Tekken games on easy mode. This goddamn easy guy's using hacks. Oh, there's a block button? What the hell?
3, 2, 1. Game.
It's not so much that it has no ideas of its own or that its creators lacked talent. The idea of a flammable ice superweapon, or a frail noodle of a woman that fights you in your head, or robots that you activate by on, are in the right direction. This is absolutely the realm we should be dwelling in. But, you know, let's look around a little bit more, right? You know what? Now that I'm watching this back, I'm realizing the science of this weapon is remarkably similar to a hazard during the vamp fight in Metal Gear Solid 2, where there is a pool of water with oxygen bubbles that would drag you down to the bottom. But look, to this game's credit, they did think to make it activated via a decommissioned satellite. But also, this game doesn't have a bisexual vampire, which docks it the remainder of its points. It seems more like Nina was placed in different hands that didn't really get what her deal was or what they were meant to do with her, besides gaze, mailingly. What could have easily been a highlight reel of kick-ass moments and sentimental flashbacks for a fun character results in her silently being led around by a radio handler through scenes that feel like they were built for a boring character, which I don't think she is. The response to this game comes as a massive disappointment to 15-year-old me, who had always longed for a series of games that made any of these characters a protagonist. My smooth-brained imagination working overtime to put 2-minute cutscenes into a larger context. Does it have numerous issues? Yes. Does that mean it's a bad game? Yes. But look, would you feel such a strong distaste for this game if it was your main's bad game? Wouldn't you see it for the big, dumb, but lovable flop it is if it was Law, or Lee, or Lay's name on the box? Kuma on. Julian. Wang. There's a ton of stuff that is just wrong about this game, but I think that might be because there is so much stuff, so many ideas. It's better with more stuff in it. Keep putting stuff in it. Put a demo for Tekken 5 in the case. Spend all the money. Don't just put save points. Make finding the save points a hot or cold minigame. Its story is pretty generic if you've played the games it's drawing inspiration from, but it's got some fun characters and slick action sequences. The thing that I tend to cling on to is the unrepeatable spirit of the 2000s. It's a special type of idea of what is cool, and this game is lousy with it. It's a shame the game isn't much like its cutscenes, which are fucking sick. The first line of text in this game is 10 trillion tons of mayhem, which I find to be just a beautiful turn of phrase. You might understandably bounce off the combat. It's visually appealing, but a touch raw on the inside, where one moment you're initiating a dazzling display of acrobatic martial arts, making Nina do that awesome grab by head, throw by head move that I find so fucking totally sick. And then others you're just humorously juggled and slammed on the ground as the camera angle rapidly switches, disorienting you. Sooner or later, I'd be put in a circumstance where it starts happening, and whatever combination of stick flicks that allowed me to do that floats away, never to return. But there is something here that's interesting, some promising alchemy that has yet to yield anything other than lead. It's not even the first attempt at it. Just a year earlier, in 2004, Sony developed and published a game called Rise to Honor, starring a famous Singaporean actor that shall remain unnamed. But this game had an almost identical control scheme, but was lauded for it. GamePro awarded it Editor's Choice and opened its coverage with "Goodbye action buttons and hello analog joystick." Both games are trying to give you a cinematic and fluid experience once you become accustomed to it, where you won't get tripped up on complex fighting game combos, but that's probably not what a lot of people had in mind walking into a fighting game spin-off, more so than a game about what Jet Li gets up to in his free time. Oh, I said his name. Cat's out of the bag. Perhaps I'm being overly protective of Nina, wanting more for her, and wanting to jump in front of the bullet 20 years later like a horribly tardy bodyguard. She's just a little dirty. We can try again. What if we tried again today? Would it go over better? What shade of disgust would I prefer? The 2020s, where just the announcement of a woman protagonist would rile up a bunch of cum-brained losers, or the 2000s?
7. That's right, but there's no line about Nina's boobies. She's got a rack that'll knock your face off.
Them video game gals are just out of the frying pan into the fire, huh? A couple sequels, like Tekken 6, would feature a beat-em-up story mode that can be played with any character, and thus can seem to echo Death by Degrees. But it's much more arcade style, and the combat is somehow less visceral and satisfying to me than Death by Degrees, and that wasn't a very high bar to clear already. Honestly, this game mode did nothing for me. Doesn't seem like much love was poured into it. You could even tell that they just sort of reused the same run cycles, giving Nina a much daintier run than she has in the normal game. That game does have a sick soundtrack, but most of them do, to be honest. This span of a couple years in action games is really interesting to observe. There were so many studios aiming for the same target, and the grouping is so scattered. I brought up Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks earlier, but really, how odd is it that in the same year, two legendary fighting game franchises would release hack and slash and beat 'em up spin-offs? One seemingly trying to set up a secondary, concurrent timeline, while the other indulges in its trademark qualities and packs its game full of cameos and fan service. Would it surprise you to know that Shaolin Monks, despite existing in the same void, was received quite favorably? Critics went considerably easier on this game, with many excusing its repetitive puzzles and unintuitive map, as at the end of the day, it's not a very long game, and the part it does seem to nail is its brain-off brand of violence. It was, in the truest sense, what was expected. It's a game that's trying, in different measures, the same thing, attempting to balance the familiar with the foreign, alienating as little of the parent game's fanbase while attracting the most people outside of said fanbase. You probably know the iconography of Mortal Kombat without ever playing it. Through gaming osmosis, you probably know the dragon symbol, you probably know about fighters falling into a pit of spikes, you probably know about fatalities or whoopsie, and all that's in there right up front. There is not a second of Shaolin Monks that doesn't look like it belongs to Mortal Kombat. You could not mistake it for anything else. Well, maybe you could. I shouldn't presume your competence level. In comparison, what in Death by Degrees immediately defines it as related to Tekken? Yeah, Nina is there, but she's got a new outfit, a new job, a new backstory, and doesn't meet another Tekken character for a long time. It lacks that strong tether to the game you know, perhaps losing its sense of self. Has it spun too far off? I reiterate that Nina could deftly carry her own game, and there was this slowly accumulating rage within me the more I dreamed about this theoretical better Nina game. And thinking like someone that doesn't know shit about game development, I instinctively started mashing up existing games in my head, thinking, well, it would be like Bayonetta meets Yakuza meets Hitman meets Sleeping Dogs, and that line of thinking is too similar to what I think resulted in Death by Degrees. They too must have just said, what if it was like Metal Gear meets Ninja Gaiden? So in some ways I get it, but at the end of the day, this rage was hyperbole, and realistically it was more like a wistful grunt. Oh well, c'est la vie. Nina. Oh, shitty. Maybe I've gone soft, maybe I just can't work up the energy to feel contempt for this game, but I will say I played through this thing more than twice, and yeah, I gave myself a little excuse. I said I didn't have enough footage of this or that, but I didn't hate doing that. In fact, gun to my head, if you told me I had to play it through again, I'd probably say, what are you waiting for? Just do it. Hand me the controller so I can play this neat video game.
It's so cool! You get to flip around and do kicks!
In my eyes, there is no real reason why this game should be so discarded by Tekken fans and by Namco. I mean, I get not making more because it did not make them money. Even in the face of decent evidence the game was meant to siphon fans away from Tecmo's output, that just builds character. That makes its conception funnier to me. Does it not amuse you that a game of this scale could have been drafted, built, and erected entirely out of spite, directed at a chain-smoking sex pest in a leather jacket? To say, oh, my game sucks? I'll show you, and then make death by degrees? I just wish I had some food. A little grub. Supper, me lord.
Don't you keep some in that wall bag?
Wall bag?
Yeah.
Oh, the bug-out bag!
That's what I said, lie.
You're right, liar! Hang on. Oh, yeah.
What do you keep in that thing anyway?
Let's see, we got some juice.
I see.
And you gotta have it chilled. So I brought some ice, but hey, where'd the ice go? Guess I'll go back to the drawing board on that one. Got a taser so I can protect my video games, which will no doubt be priceless. That copy of Extreme Beach Volleyball is gonna be like the fucking Hope Diamond. Zardoz on VHS.
And why?
Because I think it would be funny if a scenario like the film Reign of Fire were to take place and cinema would live on as spoken legends, you know?
And that's funny?
Yeah, because then Zardoz would be like the fucking Bible.
So Bibles wouldn't exist?
Hey, you don't get it. You don't get it, you don't get it. Mexican-style chicken stew. Ah, here we are. Cheese tortellini in tomato sauce. That sounds hard to fuck up. This is the meal ready to eat individual menu 13. Cheese tortellini and tomato sauce. I came into possession of it by way of somebody sending it to me in the mail, which may be some form of stolen valor. You know, the packaging on these things is actually... Up there it is. And here's our main. In an appetizing envelope. Carbohydrate electrolyte beverage powder, which somehow has 8 times more calories than a white monster, which I think goes without saying would be a big boost to morale. Chocolate peanut spread, which for whatever reason fills me with dread. Trail mix with pretzels. Got an extremely shrink-wrapped bag of smoked almonds. I don't know if you know this, but it takes about 1 to 3 gallons of water to grow a single almond. So considering the fires that are just an hour away from me, there is some measure of guilt. Yeah, but I can ignore that for now and try to focus on the smoldering remains of Mel Gibson's house. Oh, let's go. Call me Chris Pratt, because I got a boring cracker. And I'm coming to the realization that this is probably what that chocolate spread is for, unless I meant to just suck it out of the packet. Either way, it seems like something a child would eat when their parents are not home. This is our FRH, flameless ration heater, and... God damn it. Yeah, hello, can I help you?
Yeah, hi, I'm your neighbor, and we've been hearing like a lot of yelling, and...
Yelling?
We just wanted to check in, like, is everything okay here? Should we be concerned?
Sir, madam, I have been gaming.
Okay.
Leave me! Got an accessories pack, which comes with moist towelettes, some matches, and I think there's some gum in there. Oh, we got this guy. This guy's gonna come in clutch, I imagine. Got this quality looking spoon here. You know, I bet... Alright, let's get this out onto a tray. Nice. Okay, let's start up by heating up that main. Now it says here I gotta lean this against a rock or something. They've chosen to depict the rock and not the something. While we're doing that, I'll fix up this drink. In lieu of some kind of fancy mess cup, we got the Simpsons glass. Oh, that was easy. There's an immediate odor of lemon lime. permeating. Twist. Lemon lime twist. Is this shit even working? Our trail mix, which has little pretzel guys in there. Oh, there's almonds in this too. That's kind of redundant. Ooh, and a little Cracker Jack surprise. Yeah, I'm gonna eat that. Yeah, so this was not heating at all, but I think I got it now. Excited to see how this beige square is held up. Ooh, nice hiss. Yeah, that's about what I expected. They're just all fucked up. Just goddamn mess everywhere. All nutted up, ready for war crime. Oh, wow, that is just Gatorade. Incredible. It's like I went to the convenience store down the street and got some Gatorade. Oh, this is definitely heating up now. Yeah, it's about halfway heated up. Just flip that around and put it back in there. Maybe it's just a conceptual thing. I just know that this is... I'm not gonna like this. I think we now have the full spectrum of brown foods. Yeah, I'm never doing that again. Oh, here we go. Is it even ready? That's all I got. That's the end of the video. Thank you for watching it. If you enjoyed it, consider engaging with this video, or the channel itself. If you'd like to support the channel and thus gain access to exclusive paranormal content, consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, you can join a Discord server or follow me on Blue Sky. There are various other links in the description that are a lot for one person to keep track of, so you'll figure it out. Appreciate you sticking around this long. Appreciate you for watching the video, and extra appreciate Ailing Uncle, 2 Password for Kids, A Large Biotic Gerbil, Aaron Kwolek, Again Dean says thank you, Alexander Smith, Andre Perkins, Aparts 89, Ari Orison, Ashalia, Audio Video, Bayard Brown, Ben Oliver, Bionicle Enjoyer, Close Quarter Wombat, Cormac, Kronicki, D-Sky, Daniel Streb, Dante de Glanville, Daphne Pittendry, Dark Raptor 86, Dead Tired Dad, Deluminati, Dercapitan, The Real Michael King, Dirt Person, Dr. Beard, Dongs.exe, Dwellin' with Darhraku, Edgy, Fartmother,
Garbage Day!
Grime Bear, Grok, High Food Court, Ludex Alexander, Jack the Dave, James Nicholson, Jared Bynum, Jason Corbin, Jay Alameen, Jabo, John Dreffs, Jojo Cat, John Boring, Joseph Zanoni, Justin Harper, Kay Wiley, Carrot, Catherine Amelia, Labor Delenda Est, Mac Bellegarde, Michael Schmidt, Morg Detrius, Naki Naki Who's There, Noise Tanko 1, Not a Name, Ona Hill, Peter Raiki? Took a shot. If I got that wrong, feel free to change that to some kind of phonetic spelling for next time. Puke Skywalker, formerly 410,757,864,530 gay cops. Race You to Space, Ray Fox, Roland, Psycho Gekido, Salvatore Tosti, Samuel Vanderplatz, Snapple Fish, Stephen Kick, Stuart McIntyre, Takeout, That Iru Guy Loves You, This Deal is Getting Better All the Time, Two Stand, Tyler Collins, Witless Moth, Worm, Zach Bishop. After much consideration and some credit card fraud, I've realized Piss Missile is a bit crass, come cannons where it's at, yo. Alfred Correa, Azog Thoth, El Jaguar, Eto, Ava Nerve, Giraffa. I'm really trying to think of a funny name involving goblins. Jeremy Silver, J Hamilton X, June Choi. Let's see, oh, you've included instructions. That is helpful to some extent. Jayaha, TM, Kukohuha, Avery's Fat Gay Dragon Friend. Now that part I can say. Catherine Graven, Lore, Mr. Alpacleton, Savvy Fave, Smokey Jefferson, Swood Operator, T-Dog, 8083, Where Am I? Help, Zach Bagans, Lead Investigator for the IRS, A Hanging Chad, Albert Hunley, Alex Walton, Aaron Isaias, Binary Vision, Brady, the Sanity Tax Collector, Cantankerous, Chimichanga Jones, Kodamite, Daddy Resnor, Daniel Moen Larson, Dano the Mano, David Offord, Derforzi, Desmitriou, Fiona Summers, Gareth Farrow, Grounded Valkyrie. Have a wonderful day. Here's to rats. James Andrew Perla Adams, James Snipes, Jetson Jempel Nawang Lapsang Yeshe Tenzin Gatso, J-Man DX, Jonathan Pence, Larotica the News Elf, Lugubrious Moron, Mad Monty 98, Make It Rainor, Mango, Name Requires DLC, Neb, Ophelia Fishwife, P. Dizzle, Persian Air, Pickblick, Quilty Pleasures, Resident Aikman, Robert Brandon, Rowdy Roddy Peeper, Samejima, Sonderbomb, Sorry I'm No Hero, Subdermal Cassette Loader, Sugarboo, T, Technica, 10-Beat, The Angry Pebble, The Condroid, Tebow, Two Legs, 12 trans rats in a trench coat, 17 turtles in a tracksuit, 77 Elvis the King, a big gay rat, a squatting necromancer hanging at the local crypt, ASD 666, a shireling, Alistair Stewart, Alexander Olbrich, Ali G, Alistair Grout, All Cops Are Bingle Bongles, All Hands on Dick, Andrew Light, Andrew Lebrano, Andy P, Arthouse Phantom, Astro Shepherd, Osella, Auspicious Whiskers, Balton, Bames Jolie, Ben and Cara Dowling, Benjamin Payne, Best Tiger, Bibby F. in Bloxburg, Bindle, Birth Was a Mistake, Life is a Curse, I Live My Life Despite the Universe, Bishy 93, Biddles 99999999999999999, Bivd Up, Black Robed Mage, Blake, Bob Dole, Bogborn Leg Torn, Bohemian Nobody, Bostradamus, Bottle of Brannock, Brahms, Brandon Frost, Breeze McMothman, Brett Analadewski, Burps Wimbledon, Butter My Biscuits and Ham My Sandwich, Caleb Zane Kelly, Cameron Spoon, Case, Cerberus Arms, Chernobyl Kinsman, Chicago's Famous Rat Hole, Chris Miner, Crisps 989, Christopher Lawrence, Clast, Clayton Joe Freund, Colby, Cole Bramlett, Cole Beep, Count Zero Interrupt, Captain Canty, Captain Jax, Crispy J, Cyborg Number Blue, Damian H, Dan N, Danny Kilpatrick, Daphne, Dark Zeramar, David Fromke, David Harpstrite, Dazed Clockwork, Deadbleed, Deadpan Drew, Danny J.A., Destriga, Devin McCullough, Divana Upperock, Dog Vomit Slime Mold, Dom, yes, that Dom. Wait, no, not that one, the other Dom. Dr. Grimbeard's Dino Nuggy Suppository Surprise, Dunny Zero, Eben Hollub, Eben Sullivan, Eels, MV.exe, Eric Andrews, Ethan Blue, Eudiptes, Every Day, Once a Day, Give Yourself a Putty, Fangro, Furrican, 15 gargantuan low poly rats listening to Jungle, Filth Pig, Fragile Traveler, Frank Orifice, Fried Potato, Frolics with Bunnies, Fuzzy Tingle Times, Game is Good, General Porpoise, General Klazara, Ghoul Baby Bond, Gloomerous, Gnosis Burns, Goaty Galaxy, Grimby's My Big Baby Boy, Gurneel, Haley Bobella, Haywood Jablomi, Heck It's Noah, Hentai McToonboob, He's a Low Down Good 30 Snake, and I love him. High-Res Titan, Hime Rowan, Hitoshi-san.
Hold on! Those aren't my shoes.
Horror Show 93, Hrothdell, Hug, Hunterlit, Huron Lockhart, Hyborian Age Space Marine, Hyde King, I Fart on My Hands, I Promise I'll Make More Supernatural You fucker! Ideas Thief, Ilya Idamkin, I'm Not Tyler Allen, INTJ Loves Her INTP, Irish Wristwatch, Irradiated Otter, Jabari Weathers, Jacob O'Callahan, Jake, James Kelly, Jameson Calvert, J. Marco, Jeff Ladd, Jeremy Langell, Jocelyn Dover, wait, that's not right, Ben Cox, no, that's not. Fuck, I'm bad at jokes. Joshua, Just Give Me a Name, Justin Darnell, Kadokin, Captain Ketchup, Karagera, Karen Rosnow, Carpad, Caleb Bivens, Keep Up the Good Work, Kieran Walker, Kelly O'Neill, Kevin Hanley, Key Lime Pie, Kezia Bledsoe, Kid Charlemagne, The FCC Can't Catch Me, Kind Raccoon, Kingyo Ningyo, Klarstrup, Chris Odie, Crust Easy, Kurok the Famished One, Kyle Ragsdale, Q, Lori Kubri, League of Struggle, Lee, Leland Miliokis, Leonard, Leopold Gloom, Legendary Dragon, Lone Gunman, Look Tomar, It's Me, Lord Dr. Blabscrow, PhD, MD, Luke Reynolds, Lydecker, M, Magic Meows, Mainly May, Mandalore Gaming, Mango Roxas, Mark Graham, Marquois, Martin Blasco, Martin, I love you, I love my husband, Mason Trapp, Matthew St. J, Matthew Callahan, Matthew Work, Maxine Zeds, Micah J. Best, Michael Anderson, Michael Parks, Michael Yates, Miles Phillips, Monster Train, More Sharks, Mortis on Fire, Mother Destruction, Mr. Ducky Quack, Mr. Mighty McMonkey, Mystical Int, No Stars, Neckot the Brave, Nex42, Nick Hooper, Nick Timmins. No, just skip this one. Nolite Tevestarts Gabarundarum, Nuclear Sun, Noel Rom, OP Downfall, OP Chikostra, Origami Zergling, Pathetically Hopeful, Paul Fierce, Pazuzu, Philip Woolley, Philip Coffee, Picture, Pogo Daddy, Prophet, Radia, Red Chowder, Replicant, Ridley, Ruibisomem, Rusty Spork, Ruth Strange, Sathington, Scofflaw D's, Sentient Turtle, Shadanon, Shade, Shadowman 13, Sean the Prawn, Silatixo, Slatanic, Slugs and Cats, Snitzboy, Solar, Soyflowers, Spooky Schaefer, Startide, Stay Soft, Suzuya Rose, Taro Latte, Team R, T Stony, Teeny Dragator, the Clay Pigeon, the lovely Dr. Dick Punch, the Pigeon Hiding in Your Walls, the Sea Peoples, the Ninja Warrior, the Supervisor, Thick Vormon, Tim DeLong, TJ Self, Toaster Child, Tom, Tori, Trenton Wilkins, Trevelyan, Troy Webb, Tutant Meanage Needle Teedle, Unknown Function. V. Val, wake up, Val. This is a dream. You're in a coma after being trapped under your pedal board for 127 hours. You have to. Vince Van Diesel, Vincent Cronin, Wintermute, Wolf Chalice Logician, ya boy Weeaboo Jones, ya boy Mike, Zanga PF, Zen, Zagingu, Zoop de Whoop, Zuli the Little Blue Kobold, and put a little dirt under my pillow for the Dirt Man. For being a patron. Thank you for that. I am endlessly grateful for your support. Look, life comes at you fast, and if you don't make content, you'll die and it'll all go away. Anyway, there was a recent poll that I ran on the Discord for the next video game review video, and the winner was 2004's The Chronicles of Riddick Escape from Butcher Bay, which I'm pretty excited about. Wild to think that this came out before Death by Degrees. Because that's one of the last times I remember being like completely blown away visually by a game, and comparatively Death by Degrees is a little plain Jane. I've been starting many fires for a patron-only video, and one of those has gotta take soon, but that is not an endeavor I've given up on. I think, hey, you've kept me aloft in life, so the least I can do is like give you a special little snacky. Gaming news? Do I have gaming news? There's been a lot of games that came out recently that are cool. Sorry We're Closed, Threshold, 10 Dead Doves, Mouthwashing. A lot of great inventive little indie games coming out that I recommend. Well, I could hang out here yapping all day, but every second I'm not making content, I'm just wasting away. 2025. Let's kiss this pig. I don't know what that means.
My worst is my gun.
You'll never win the Rave War.
What?
The Rave War. The original working title for Tekken. It's way cooler, don't you think?
You're wrong!
Plur, motherfucker.